Chapter 2. Both of Us. Lothal, 1BBY. The trio of Imperial Star Destroyers loomed over Lothal City, casting triangular shadows over the city's frightened citizens. Smoke rose from burning streets after the Imperial fleet's bombardment ceased, leaving a haze of horror and anticipation. In the skies above, the smoke shifted as numerous large entities, led by a diamond-shaped freighter, drifted into the atmosphere toward the Star Destroyers, stirring astonishment and apprehension within the frightened citizens below. Within the bridge of the Imperial flagship, the Chimera, the Jedi Ezra Bridger faced Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn. As the entities drifted forward out of the smoke, Thrawn discerned dozens of massive purgils, tentacled space whales soaring through the haze. Turning back to Ezra, he purred, "Whatever happens next happens to both of us." As a shadow passed across the bridge of the Chimera, a vast purple beast drifted past the bridge, obscuring the Lothali sun. The Grand Admiral turned toward the creature and saw his blue face reflected in the beast's eye. "That's the idea," Ezra Bridger retorted, furrowing his brow and retraining his blaster on the Grand Admiral. Tentacles thrust through the transparasteel windows, slamming into the stormtroopers ringing the bridge. Blaster fire erupted, glancing harmlessly off of the tentacles as they thrashed and flailed. Thrawn fired several shots before recognizing that shooting the tentacles inflicted no damage. He charged forward toward Ezra, who reached his hand outward. An unseen force threw Thrawn toward the tentacles, which wrapped around his abdomen, pressing in on his stomach and knocking away his breath. "Sir, Ezra, can you hear me?" called a woman's voice in alarm through Ezra's wrist comm. "Purgils, is this you?" "Yeah. Pretty good, huh?" Ezra said, grinning despite the darkness spreading across the bridge as the Purgils entwined their tentacles around the ship. "Well, you could have told the rest of us," Sabine Wren responded through the comm, annoyed. "And I wanted it to be a surprise," Ezra joked, a flicker of sadness mingling with his amusement as he savored the sound of Sabine's voice, possibly for the last time. The blast door behind him opened, and several stormtroopers rushed forward. Ezra turned and pushed outward with the force, sending the lead death trooper to the floor and knocking the supporting stormtroopers to the side. Several quick shots from his blaster dropped the stormtroopers before a searing pain tore through his left shoulder. He cried aloud, collapsing to the floor in pain. He spun around, and through the force knocked the blaster from Thrawn's hand, pushing him backward once again into a control panel. The tentacles re-established their embrace of Thrawn, restraining him from charging at Ezra. The blast door opened, and a trio of troopers jogged forward. Ezra swiped his hand, closing the blast door again, locking the stormtroopers out. The tentacles entwined around Thrawn tightened, lifting him off the ground. Ezra, get out of there right now." "That's an order," Ezra heard Hera Syndulla's voice command through his wrist comm. "Terra, I have to see this through to the end," Ezra said, wincing in pain from his shoulder and from the ache of knowing this might be the last time Hera would issue a command at him. Blue lights began to pulsate on the tentacles entwining Thrawn, who grunted in pain as the tentacles tightened. "Ezra, please, get out of there," Sabine called, her voice anguished. "I can't do that," Ezra said calmly, determination blossoming through acceptance. The pulsating quickened as several Purgils ahead of the pod vanished. "It's up to all of you now," Ezra said into his wrist comm, as he continued to hold both Thrawn and the blast doors at bay. "And remember, the Force will be with you, always." A blinding flash of light followed, and the Chimera shot forward, vanishing from the skies above Lothal. As the ship shot forward, Ezra felt a rush of wind sweep him off of his feet as the vacuum of space sucked him forward. A tentacle wrapped around his waist, and the blast door behind him opened. Ezra felt the cold nothing of vacuum tearing at his throat, and in his last glance before blackness overtook him, he felt a surge of satisfaction knowing that, as death found him, it would find Thrawn as well. Variegated pulses of blue light flashed through the darkness of space, throbbing in time with a colossal ache. As Ezra Bridger became aware of the pain, he became aware of his body. As he became aware of his body, he knew that he was alive. His eyes flew open to the white curve of an armored back lying on the ground, facing away. Sirens blared in the distance, and the pain in his head screamed in harmony. He closed his eyes, attempting to ward off the pain, when he became aware of a rustling sound. A scraping sound told him that something was dragging across the floor. Realizing he was surrounded by enemies, Ezra drew from the force, feeling its energy flow into him, restoring some of his strength. A stormtrooper rose to his feet on the opposite end of the chamber, his blaster hanging limply at his side as he struggled to take his bearings. The stormtrooper saw Ezra propping himself up, and as his training kicked in, it swung its blaster upward to fire at Ezra. Ezra reacted instantly, and the blaster flew out of the stormtrooper's hand and skittered across the floor. Ezra pushed his hand forward, and the trooper flew backward, slamming into the wall and collapsing into an unconscious heap. Ezra leaned over, picking up the blaster off of the ground. As he straightened up, he saw Grand Admiral Thrawn, his body limp on the ground. Ezra stepped over the stormtrooper and kneeled beside Thrawn, placing his fingers on the Admiral's neck to check for a pulse. After a moment's searching, he felt the slow pulse in the Admiral's carotid artery, and Ezra stepped back, regarding his unconscious enemy. Ezra raised the blaster, pointing it into Thrawn's unconscious face. Memories of blaster fire raining down on Lothal as Thrawn directed his forces to fire on civilians flashed through his mind, stirring a corrosive, vengeful hatred. Thrawn had murdered thousands in his cold, single-minded pursuit of power. He deserves to die, Ezra thought to himself, leveling the blaster again after it had lowered a fraction of an inch. What was it he had said, Ezra wondered to himself, as he aimed the blaster at the loathsome, unconscious man, who deserves what is irrelevant. What matters is who has power. Finally, he had the power to stop Thrawn once and for all, and a dark thrill surged through his body. As his finger wrapped around the trigger of the blaster, a flash of Kanan's face swam before his eyes, and he heard a distant, rumbling voice mutter doom. The word reverberated through the reaches of his memory like thunder across the plains of Lothal, and another echo resonated through his mind. It's not how we fight, it's how we choose to fight that matters. He stepped back reflexively, and Thrawn awoke, his red eyes blinking into consciousness. As Thrawn's senses registered where he was, he locked gazes with Ezra, and Ezra straightened up again, raising the blaster at Thrawn's face. A cold smile twisted at the corners of Thrawn's mouth. "Are you going to kill me, Ezra Bridger?" Thrawn whispered, then coughed painfully at the effort. Ezra stepped forward, pointing the blaster between Thrawn's glowing red eyes. Behind him, the blast doors slid open, and Ezra spun into blue rings of energy expanding across the room. The rings slammed into his chest as unconsciousness submerged him once again. The tall grass waved in the breeze as he looked to the sky, tracing the course of thousands of tentacled space whales as they drifted through the heavens. In the distance, a wolf howled, a lonely, forlorn sound trailing into nothingness. He sat bolt upright and looked ahead. There, Sabine Wren stood, her helmet cradled in her arms. "Oh, Jew should have told me," she said, a tear streaming down her cheek. The dream dissipated as his eyes flung open. He recoiled against the bright sodium light shining into his face from above. Adrenaline exploded through his body, and he sat up, swinging his bare feet onto a cold, metallic floor. Before him, a ray shield thrummed and throbbed, stretching across a 3-meter-wide opening stretching between white walls. Beyond the ray shield, a humanoid figure with blue skin and glowing red eyes sat in the darkness, his legs crossed as if awaiting an appointment. Ezra reacted immediately, reaching out with the force to push Thrawn away. Before he could summon the power, a white-hot jolt of electricity shot through his body, coursing from his feet to his head as his blood vessels conducted the voltage. He collapsed onto the metal ground, feeling the electricity burning his hands. The electricity subsided as his body shook violently. "That had to hurt," Thrawn's mocked, his voice barely audible over the buzz of the ray shields. Ezra raised himself up gingerly, noticing as he did so that the pain in his shoulder was gone. His body throbbed from the electrocution, but otherwise he felt healthy. He turned toward Thrawn and tensed. "Ever the slow learner," Thrawn taunted. Ezra looked down at the floor, curling his toes at the cold metal below his feet. Recognizing that there was no move to be made, he settled himself back on the bed. Thrawn sat silently, content to allow Ezra to speak first. Ezra felt a flare of annoyance, then snapped, "So what? Are we just going to sit here and stare at each other?" "Thanks to you, we have the luxury of time," Thrawn said, his mocking tone growing icy. "It may please you to know that we are currently stranded in the unknown regions." Whatever Ezra had been expecting, this answer was not it. "The unknown regions. I am unaware of any speech impediment," the Admiral replied coldly, adding, "This is not an optimal situation for any of us." "Sounds like a you problem," Ezra snapped back. "And as if I were the only one affected," Thrawn retorted. He uncrossed his legs and leaned forward, and the purple-red glow of the ray shielding brightened his chiseled features. "Then our over 33,000 crew on the Chimera. I owe a similar responsibility to them that you owed the crew of the Ghost." "Imperial soldiers," Ezra scoffed. "Now, who's being callous?" Thrawn asked, his voice disdainful. Ezra leaned back into the wall and rolled his eyes. "If we're lost in the unknown regions, that means you can't fight the rebellion, and that's one less problem my friends have to deal with. Solve one problem, and 3 more emerge," Thrawn stated, bringing his fingers together. "Tell me, Ezra Bridger, what do you know of the Grysk?" "The what?" Ezra asked, frowning. "And I thought so," Thrawn purred. "And I expect you were too busy stumbling through your Jedi training and pining for the Mandalorian to wonder why I, an exile from the unknown regions, would serve the Emperor." "Power," Ezra retorted. "But to what end?" Thrawn mused. "When you murder innocent civilians, motive is meaningless," Ezra accused. "But when murder serves a righteous cause, does it cease to be murder?" Thrawn countered as he rose from his seat. He strolled toward the ray shielding, stopping less than a meter from the crackling static barrier. "And don't murder innocents," Ezra countered, locking his gaze with Thrawn. Typical of the Jedi, to only see things as black and white. Thrawn paused, and Ezra imagined he was swallowing down something unpleasant. He added, "Pity that I am here to ask for your help." Ezra barked a vicious laugh, crossing his arms. "I'd just as soon let you rot." "Oh, you had your chance for that," Thrawn whispered, his eyes narrowed. Ezra tensed his shoulders to shrug away a wave of regret. When the wave passed, he said, "Oh, I won't hesitate the next time." "Of course not," Thrawn dismissed. "At any rate, we are stranded in the unknown regions, likely in Grysk space. If they find us in this state, we shall die, and cruelly. Our one stroke of good. Fortune is that we are approaching a habitable planet where we may find sufficient materials to repair the Chimera, enabling us to chart a path back to the galaxy." "Yeah, let me stop you right there," Ezra said, crossing his arms again. "If you think I'm going to help you return, and then we remain lost in Grysk space, before long, a Grysk raiding party will find us. They capture and kill us, then use our systems to extrapolate a path back to the galaxy. They enter the galaxy and attack the Empire, which is currently preoccupied with your foolish, wasteful rebellion," Thrawn said. "I'm sure they'll figure it out," Ezra said, looking away to signal he was through with the conversation. "If you truly cared for your friends, you would not be so cavalier," Thrawn growled, turning away from the ray shield to plug commands into a console. A hologram of a planet emerged in the center of the room. "This," Thrawn said, turning away from the console and stepping toward the hologram, "is a Grysk." The image of a Grysk appeared in place of the planet, and Ezra regarded the cruel, bestial features. A ridged brow sloped down to jet-black eyes and a flat nose. The mouth hung open, leering, the creature's jagged teeth razor-sharp. It wore angular armor cut in harsh angles, and it wielded a scythe humming and throbbing. Ezra shifted uncomfortably at the sight. Penumbra in the billions. They are nomadic, and they range from planet to planet, taking what they will and leaving devastation in their wake. Sinai assessed the Republic, determining it a weak and feckless body. The Jedi possessed untapped power, but aside from one individual, they held no desire to wield it. Only when the Empire emerged did I believe that the galaxy was capable of countering the Grisk, Thrawn said, then added, and the Emperor and I made an arrangement of convenience. Ezra continued to regard the Grisk's hologram, which rotated slowly. Ezra turned to Thrawn, alarmed. In his mistrust for Thrawn, he allowed the alarm to subside, and he leaned back, crossing his arms again. And even if any of this was true, I don't see any reason why I should help. I'm not even sure what you expect me to do. Unfortunately, navigation computers serve little purpose in the unknown regions. If we are to return, we will require something only you possess, Thrawn explained. Which is? Ezra asked. Your attunement to the Force, Thrawn nodded. I don't see a lightsaber doing much good here, Ezra retorted. If your only tool is a lightsaber, Thrawn scoffed. No, when we repair the Chimera, you will use your connection to the Force to navigate the unknown regions. Ah, Ezra uttered, but if you don't think you have the capacity. Thrawn threatened quietly. It might as well throw me out of the airlock then, Ezra shot back. If I lead you back to the galaxy, you return to kill more innocent people. And your friends have no warning about the Grisk. They drain the Empire's resources in a protracted civil war, allowing the Grisk to ravage the galaxy, Thrawn affirmed. Don't buy it, Ezra countered. Why would you care about our part of the galaxy? Don't, Thrawn retorted. What I do for revenge. The image of the Grisk vanished, replaced by a young Chiss girl, no older than 9. Thrawn regarded the picture somberly, then turned back to Ezra. But my sister. Murdered by the Grisk. Thrawn's eyes glowed brighter as his anger surged. And one day, a great war will come. And when it does, I will be there to orchestrate the destruction of the Grisk. I'm not letting you anywhere near that kind of power, Ezra declared. That is a bridge we will cross in due time, Thrawn acknowledged. In the meantime, I offer this. I release you from your prison. We work together to repair the ship. If not for me, perhaps consider the thousands of lives you've impacted, lives which you so callously disregard. When we return. If we return, Ezra interrupted. Allow you to go your own way, unfettered, Thrawn said. When you will be free to rejoin your pathetic rebellion. And what's to stop me from killing you before that happens? Ezra asked. What stopped you before? Thrawn mocked. Ezra hesitated, then said, Ilmari agree to nothing. But for the time being, I'll play along. And I'll accept that, Thrawn said, then added, Now, if you would accompany me to the bridge. We are about to land on the planet's surface. Ezra followed Thrawn into the bridge, glancing around him uncomfortably at the Imperial officers and stormtroopers who all stopped what they were doing to watch the Jedi accompanying the Grand Admiral. Thrawn reached the observation deck, newly repaired from the damage done by the Purgils. Status report, Commander, Thrawn ordered. Grand Admiral, we've reached the planet's atmosphere and have determined a suitable place to land. There are several habitations miles away, minimal technology, sparse populations, the commander reported. Species? Thrawn replied. Unknown, the commander said, but our scouts report extensive evidence of conflict. Whatever population remains is a remnant. Our scouts also observed ruins that suggest that the species once possessed advanced technology, but now struggles to survive. Thrawn inclined his head toward Ezra, saying, Tan the Grisk. Ezra stepped forward as another chill swept over him. He closed his eyes, attuning his senses to a cold, gnawing feeling at the back of his mind. As he reached out his senses to the planet, his mind swam in and out of focus, leaving a disconnected, uncertain feeling. This is a bad idea, Ezra warned. And suppose we could turn back to open space with a crippled ship and limp back to the galaxy, Thrawn retorted sardonically. So, okay, Ezra replied, but I have a bad feeling about this. The Chimera lumbered ahead, passing over a vast red planet scoured with craters. A bright pink haze rimmed the sky, which turned to an ashy grey as they descended further into the atmosphere. Green oceans sprawled across the southern hemisphere, rimming several continents on the north. Shades of green, brown, and white-capped mountain ranges suggested some life, but large swaths of the planet appeared wasted and uninhabitable. The Chimera cruised toward a valley rimmed with mountains and lowered slowly to a broad, flat valley. Minutes later, the ship settled with a bump, and as the ship began to power down, Thrawn called out, "On all scouts, begin reconnaissance. Full report on all flora and fauna. Immediate priority sustainability, followed by resource assessment." Thrawn then turned to Ezra, saying, "And now, Master Jedi, we shall begin." "Begin what?" Ezra asked uncertainly. "Our journey home, of course," Thrawn replied, a cryptic smile twisting the corner of his mouth.